So recently, we at long last saw the release of the Miraculous Shanghai special titled Miraculous World Shanghai: The Legend of Lady Dragon. Now I'll admit, coming into this episode, I was not hyped. I really just wasn't. I was hoping for a continuation of the storyline between season 3 and 4, and hearing that this was taking place between 2 and 3 felt like they were ignoring the current plot for a boring side story. But I have no issues whatsoever saying I was wrong. This special was mega hype. Maybe it's just recency bias, but I wouldn't be surprised if this ranks up there as one of my favourite Miraculous episodes or specials of all time. I just thought it was so good, and despite it being pretty irrelevant to current storylines, it really served to flesh out the world and the wider lore of the Miraculous universe. But all that gushing aside now, let's go ahead and break down the episode, and I'll give you my thoughts on the different plot points and story progression. We open the episode with some brief expositional narration telling the story of Wu Shifu, a guardian responsible for watching over an enchanted cave during the eclipse. After being abandoned by his students in exchange for money, he begins to fear that he won't be able to train the next generation of guardians, and that he's failed in his duty. One night, however, he finds a baby, naming her Faye, and both raises her as his daughter and trains her to take over as the next guardian. But then, mysterious figures end up hunting down and seemingly murder her dad and steal her magical bracelet. And then the intro rolls. And honestly, that was a pretty heavy opening. Like, I don't usually find exposition all that exciting, but I thought there were some pretty interesting moments. The first being that they just full-on murdered her dad, like full-on killed him off within a minute of his debut. I thought that was a pretty ballsy move considering the show loves its happy endings and fixing the damage villains cause. And that's the second time these specials have had big lasting consequences. This one obviously being with an actual character death, and the New York special having Paris get wrecked by a Sentimonster rampage and not being able to be fixed. And I like that they're shifting the tone slightly to make it a bit darker. Don't get me wrong, I don't want a full-blown edgelord show, but some darker moments to contrast with the more lighthearted stuff is really important too. And the second interesting element from the intro I found was that the dude with the fan crops up again. Now, I know that he appears later in the episode and he's pretty important, and then he crops up again in New York at some point. And I'm really intrigued as to what his actual role is, and I'm curious as to whether he'll keep appearing in just specials, or whether he'll make his way into the show at some point too. Could he maybe be a post-Hawkmoth villain? Or maybe all the specials will tie together and have this dude as some kind of main villain with a big team-up special with all the heroes around the world. But I guess we'll have to wait and see with that. It's just speculation at this point. Also, the actual intro theme song is also really, really hype. Orchestral themes are so good, and I wish the show would use one instead. Anyway, back to the story, and we see Marinette's class getting let out of school and beginning their summer break. We have a brief montage of Ladybug and Cat Noir not having to fight any Akumas, and then, whilst running an errand to post a present to Shanghai for her Uncle Wang, Marinette discovers that Adrian's in Shanghai, and so she pulls a pro-creeper move and plots to travel there on the off chance that she can meet up with him. And I get that it's necessary for the plot, but I really hate the creepy stalker stuff. Things like knowing his measurements, or literally following him to another country because of an obsession, is just not that funny to me. It's awkward, and it's borderline sad. Meanwhile, on Gabriel's private plane, we have a very brief scene of father-son bonding before we jump into some of the details of the plot. Hawkmoth has come into possession of Faye's bracelet and is going to use the eclipse to open the cave and obtain the Prodigious, a powerful artifact that's been locked away because it's too dangerous. And this was pretty surprising for me. They pretty much stated that it was more overpowered than the Ladybug earrings or the Cat's ring, because otherwise those would have been locked away too, right? I mean, Hawkmoth openly says that he wants to use it to defeat Ladybug and Cat Noir, so obviously he's pretty confident. Although he is also a famous dummy, so take his opinion with a grain of salt. And at the same time, the fact that Nuru knows about all this probably means that the Guardians of the Miraculous and the Guardian of the Prodigious are connected somehow. I mean, for all we know, they're part of the same group, just since the Prodigious Guardians live near the cave, they didn't get eaten by Fu's Sentimonster. Gabriel then goes on to say he's going to finish what he started 15 years ago, and that's pretty ominous. Sounds like he did some evil stuff 15 years ago, which is odd because Season 1 makes it seem as if him being a turd is a more recent thing. Next up, we see Marinette convince her parents to let her go to Shanghai, tricking them into thinking it's to connect with her Chinese origins. We have a cute little moment of her dad sprinting upstairs and back down in record time before they give her their blessing to go, whilst also conveniently staying in Paris so that they can't be loose plot threads. And then going from cute scene to cute scene, we then see Marinette arrive in Shanghai and have a conversation with her Uncle Wang, who's super excited to have her come stay, referencing that he took time off for the first time since her mother left to go to Paris. He's even been practicing his French. This scene was cute, but also kinda sad, because I got lonely old man vibes from Wang, like those old dudes who buy coffee from McDonald's every day so they have somebody to talk to. Then, after a little bit of backstory about Marinette's family, she zooms off into the world in search of Adrian, which is really where the plot moves past exposition and setup and actually starts to move into the main story. Marinette proceeds to track Adrian via GPS, which is, again, creepy. And Adrian takes some photos with fans whilst Gorilla sneaks off to buy some superhero toys from the market stalls. And I love the little snippets of personality we get from Gorilla in these specials, whether it's his secret love of superheroes, or his fear of flying that needs to be soothed by relaxation podcasts. It just helps to fully flesh out a lot of minor characters and the world itself. And as all this is happening, we get a glimpse of what Hawkmoth is up to as he arrives at the ruins of Faye's temple and pretty quickly finds the secret passageway into the cave. So obviously, he has a bit of prior knowledge about the cave and the temple. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he was involved with bumping off Faye's dad. At this point, it feels somewhat plausible to his character. And then we get to see Faye again, who's on the hunt to retrieve her bracelet whilst doing good deeds, before deciding she has to go against her beliefs and rob people to regain her necklace. And interestingly, she briefly attempts to snag Adrian's ring before being scared off by Gorilla. And I really liked this little scene. All the Guardian characters are honestly such beasts. They pull off such cool stuff without ever needing to power up from the jewels. And I guess this is probably why the monk from Furious Fu was so against them ever using Miraculouses. They've just become so overpowered. And then Faye has a run-in with Marinette and manages to steal the Ladybug earrings and Tiki before being chased off by Adrian's fanboys. Marinette, misinterpreting things, then attempts to chase down the group and help Faye. Ducking into an alleyway, she tries to transform before realizing she's been robbed. And this scene was really unintentionally funny. It felt like it was meant to be really dramatic, but it just looked so silly that she started calling out Tiki's name and swaying on the spot as the shot zoomed out. And we also got to see Faye do some kung fu on Adrian's fanboys, and it was a little bit uncalled for, but it was pretty cool as well. Meanwhile, back at Wang's house, we see Adrian arrive and decide to help cook dinner as a surprise to Marinette, and we also get another classic, oh no, she's just a friend moment between him and the bird. We then have an interesting back and forth scene where we see Marinette out in the streets of Shanghai attempting to locate her stolen items, whilst also trying to break down the language barrier. Meanwhile, Adrian cooks with Wang, and this scene was really sweet for me, because Adrian gets that father-son bonding time he wanted to have with Gabriel, whilst Wang got to have young people in the house again and felt less lonely. Heavy, heavy feels for me here. Cutting back to Faye, we see her deliver her stolen goods to the guy that totally stole her bracelet, burned down her house and killed her dad, all because he says he'll help her get her stuff back and get revenge. I'm not really sure about Faye's thought process here, but this dude's clearly evil. He then screws her over by underpaying her and sends her off to find Marinette to buy back her stuff for a high price. Marinette then runs into the fanboys, who she thinks are going to try and hurt her, and she runs away straight into Faye, who helps her escape, and then listens to her sob story, which gets her feeling all guilty. Whilst the two girls make their way to the pawn shop, Adrian goes around Shanghai as Cat Noir, searching for Marinette, claiming that French superheroes look after lost tourists, and also calling Ladybug to give him more of an alibi and set up why she would also be there for story reasons. I like these little moments. It just helps with the continuity and shows that care is actually being put into the story and the motivations behind it all. They aren't just saying screw it and acting like nobody would notice or care. They give reasons for the heroes suddenly being there. And then the pair arrive at the seedy pawn shop, and the equally seedy owner attempts to extort Marinette for a huge amount of money in exchange for the earrings. Faye, having a change of heart, simply steals the earrings back, prompting the owner to send his goons out in pursuit. After some brief kung fu shenanigans, the fanboys show up and distract the goons whilst the heroes run away to Faye's old temple. Obviously, the old dude then follows them and reveals Faye stole the earrings before getting akumatized because he's greedy. And I thought this was pretty cool, because usually people get akumatized because they've been wronged or they're upset or angry. This dude is just a bad person, and Hawkmoth was able to take advantage of that. I also like that they thought outside the box a little on that one. Anyway, he turns him into a giant gold statue villain, and then Marinette runs off to transform into Ladybug. The pawnshop guy and Hawkmoth attempt to break through the secret door before Faye briefly attempts to stop them, putting up a little bit of a fight against pawnshop guy before getting sneak attacked and dropped down a well by Hawkmoth. I love that these random kung fu masters actually put up decent fights against superpower characters. A lot of the time when characters get super strength, writers tend to just make them pretty invincible, so it's cool to see the actual normal humans put up a fight simply because they're very skilled. As expected, the villains then burst into the secret room and the eclipse starts, allowing Hawkmoth and the villain to enter the vault whilst Ladybug and Faye hide. And then, of course, Hawkmoth mentions that he bought the bracelet from Pawnshop Guy, who obviously stole it from Faye, and that Hawkmoth has been waiting 15 years for this moment. And this left me a little bit confused. Did he buy this thing 15 years ago? Or did he simply hear about the prodigious years ago? Because we see that Faye had it stolen from her and she looked the same age. Does she have special kung fu de-aging powers like Fu did? And why has Hawkmoth been waiting 15 years? I thought he only turned evil recently because his wife went full Sleeping Beauty. I'd really love it if someone would clarify this for me, because I'm a little bit lost. Anyway, Hawkmoth summons the Protector of the Prodigious and then proceeds to try and screw him over and steal it without facing the trial, in true Hawkmoth fashion. Unluckily for him, he gets sneak attacked by Ladybug, who then has to fight the akumatized villain while Faye puts on the necklace and transforms into Lady Dragon, a hero who can morph into animals with the aid of spirits called Renlings. Using the Renling of Calm, she turns into a bear and whoops both the villain and Hawkmoth, saving Ladybug in the process, who then activates her lucky charm. The pair then have a little 2v2 against the villains, and Lady Dragon proves that the Prodigious is way better than a Miraculous. I mean, for one, I'm a sucker for heroes that turn into animals, but it's also so versatile, and it doesn't seem to have a recharge timer as opposed to Ladybug and the rest of the teenage heroes. Seriously, she's such a cool hero, and I really hope she makes more appearances in the future and isn't forgotten about. Anyway, in order to defeat the villains, Lady Dragon tries to turn into a dragon, only to be told that she can't, because seeking revenge goes against the values of the dragon spirit, and thus she's locked out of using that power for now, before she seemingly gets crushed to death by a pillar. Hawkmoth, gloating as it looks like he's won the battle, tosses Ladybug's basketball lucky charm to her and laughs, before Ladybug notices Cat Noir hiding nearby. Bouncing the villain's fan off the ball, Ladybug is able to knock it to Cat Noir, who destroys it with a cataclysm. And man, I'm usually all for laughing at Hawkmoth's smooth brain, but this one just isn't fair. Yeah, he should have been smarter than to give her back her lucky charm item, but it's such an unlikely and unfortunate sequence of events that I just can't help but feel bad for him. He got screwed there. Screwed. And then somehow he akumatizes the Guardian statue, and honestly, I think this part was kind of dumb. How did he even do this? If Chloe can resist an Akuma, if Luca can hold off an Akuma for a few seconds before giving in, how can an ancient magical being somehow think, yeah, this guy that tried to screw me over and steal my magical necklace must be more trustworthy than this girl who's watched over my temple her whole life? And why was he even mad? Because she failed the test? Surely he would have been expecting that she could fail. I felt like they could have handled this plot point a lot better. Anyway, as usual, Hawkmoth realizes his plan was very bad once the monster starts heading towards the city where Adrian supposedly is, and he orders him to stop before getting fully vaporized. Well, I guess the villain didn't trust him after all, but why is this guy so angry? He hasn't even asked for the amulet back at this point, he's just killing people. Faye and the heroes briefly fight him after he massacres a bunch of randoms, and they get whooped. Then he finally asks for the amulet back, and Faye, having some self-confidence issues and thinking that everything's her fault, almost agrees. But Ladybug tries to pep her up and tell her that she's the only person who can defeat him. Although not really, because Ladybug's the only one who can purify Akumas, so really Ladybug just needs her help to destroy the object. Faye then runs off, and so Cat Noir attempts to kill the big fella, and he literally gets killed in one shot. Man, he was in this fight for like 5 minutes. 5 minutes! One day maybe he'll be relevant. Maybe. Hopefully. Probably not. Ladybug de-transforms to give Faye a pep talk as Marinette, and then the two of them get attacked and the building they're on explodes, with Faye finally unlocking the power of the dragon to save Marinette from becoming a splattered corpse on the pavement. And this was cool, but how the hell did Faye not figure out that she's Ladybug from this? The temple's like on the other side of town. Plus, how would Marinette possibly have gotten onto the building or known that she was there? Seems like a bit of a plot convenience right here. Unless this is just some unsaid thing that she does actually know, but it wasn't made very clear and I'm just stupid. Anyway, Ladybug transforms again, and they take down the villain pretty quickly. Pretty stock standard finish. And then, since she managed to set aside her revenge, Lady Dragon's made the permanent user of the Prodigious, and she gets her bracelet back. And it turns out that Meishi, the guardian of the Prodigious, is actually the Lion Kwami, and now that his mission's over, he can chill with her. So I guess that happened too. I kinda wish we saw what that power-up would look like though. Maybe one day. And then we have a happy ending with all the new friends eating with Wang, and then the fanboys turn up with Marinette's necklace and they come in and eat too. And then apparently Faye can also play the accordion for some reason, and the fanboys fall in love with her, and she seemingly gets adopted out of the blue by Wang. Also, low-key flirting between Adrian and Marinette. The ending seemed a little bit crammed and rushed, but I don't think I minded much. After all, the action and the story was what really mattered the most, and from that perspective, I thought it was really well done. And then that brought us to the end, and I was really satisfied with this special. Whilst Adrian seemingly took a bit of a backseat again, I think it was probably necessary as it let Faye really shine as a character and made her seem really important and special. That being said though, I'd like to hear some of your thoughts. What did you think of the special? Did you like Lady Dragon, or maybe not? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know.